The United States national debt officially passed $24 trillion for the first time in history, and now we have to start thinking about a national debt bubble. What's up, everybody? I am Jaspreet Singh and welcome to the Minority Mindset. The United States government is racking up debt faster than we've ever seen happen in history and is inflating one massive national debt bubble. And it doesn't help that you have thousands of cities across the nation that are already seeing huge shortfalls in their budget, so they're planning budget cuts and mass layoffs. But let's put this in perspective. If you work hard and you earn a nice job as a consultant making $100,000 a year, you might want to celebrate by buying yourself a nice big home. But you can't have a big home without a Benz or a Beamer in your driveway, so you drive on over to the car dealership and you finance both a Benz and a Beamer because you couldn't decide. Then you're driving home in your Benz and you realize, wait, I can't be sitting in a Benz without wearing a $700 Gucci belt. What would my neighbors say? If you keep financing this fake rich lifestyle, eventually your Gucci wardrobe is gonna turn into your bank's Gucci wardrobe. You are building a debt bubble around yourself. Like, your income is here, this is a technical figure, and your expenses are here. So if anything happened, like, I don't know, you lost your job, well, now you're in trouble. If your income drops, then your debt bubble just burst, and now you either have to declare bankruptcy, foreclose, or start selling your Gucci. Not the Gucci! Now, if we take your debt bubble and we inject some steroids into it and we use this debt to finance our entire country, our states, and our cities, now this debt bubble just became 24 trillion times bigger. And that's why today I'm going to be talking about our national debt bubble. So make sure you watch this video until the end because you want to know how you can protect your money. But before we get into that, hit that thumbs up button below, because if you don't, then YouTube doesn't share our video to anybody else. Subscribe to the Minority Mindset YouTube channel. That way you don't miss our new financial education videos every single week. And hit that little notification bell too, because if you don't, then YouTube doesn't let you know when the new videos are released. Let's start with a little bit of background information. That way we're all on the same page. The government isn't a for-profit entity. They don't sell goods in exchange for services. They get their money to pay their politicians and fund their services through you and me, taxpayers, through tax dollars. That might seem straightforward, but it gets a little bit confusing when you add in the fact that our dollars aren't backed by anything tangible. Like, our United States dollars aren't backed by gold or silver or anything else. They're just backed by a promise or faith that our money has value. That's why it costs 12 cents to print a $100 bill, but a $100 bill can buy you a whole lot more than what 12 pennies can. This monetary system, or money system that we live in, lets the government print as much cash as they want through the help of the Federal Reserve Bank and the Treasury Department. Now, you might be wondering, wait, if the government has their own money printer, why are they in debt? Like, if I had my own money printer, I'd never have to worry about paying extra for guac. Well, printing money has a cost. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but nothing in life is free, and you'll see why this matters so much in just a minute. So back to the government. The government does whatever the government does. They pay for their services, they pay for their politicians and everything in between, and then they get the money to pay for these services through us, taxpayers, with tax dollars. But if tax dollars aren't enough to pay for all these expenses and services that the government paid for, then the government needs to borrow this money from somewhere else. If you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you already know the importance of living below your means. That way you have money to save and invest. The government doesn't. In 2019, the government spent almost $1 trillion more than what they generated through taxes. 2020 is gonna be a whole lot worse than that. In 2020, not only does the government have their regular expenses to pay, but they're gonna have less tax dollars coming in because, well, nobody's working. And on top of that, they're paying and financing trillions of dollars worth of stimulus with money they don't have. So that's kind of like you living that finance lifestyle we talked about in the beginning of this video, and then you lose your income, but instead of downsizing, you go out and you finance a brand new car or 100 new cars. There are a few ways the government can borrow this money to finance their expenses. One way is by borrowing money from other countries, but the whole world is kind of in a recession right now, so that probably won't work. Instead, the government's gonna start by selling treasury bonds to raise that money. A bond is a loan, and a treasury bond is a loan that you make to the government in exchange for interest. So the government is selling trillions of dollars worth of these treasury bonds to raise money to finance all these operations, but the problem is nobody wants to buy these treasury bonds. Lending money to the government through these treasury bonds is, in theory, supposed to be a risk-free investment. That's what they always tell you in economics class, and because it is almost risk-free, the returns tend to, well, suck. And on top of that, investors are really worried about the future of our economy and this debt bubble, so nobody wants to buy these treasury bonds. Well, lucky for the government, that's where their money printer comes in handy. The government knows that people aren't gonna buy up these trillions of dollars worth of treasury bonds, so they're gonna call up their best friends at the Federal Reserve Bank. Hey Fed, how you doing? Listen, I know you love paying top dollar for crappy investments, and I got something special for you. That's when the Federal Reserve Bank will work with the Treasury Department, and they'll walk on over to the money printing machine and enter in how much money they want to print. Boop, boop, boop. A couple $1 trillion. Out come a couple $1 trillion. The Fed will use this money to buy up a bunch of Treasury bonds, and the government now gets their $1 trillion because they sold these investments to the Federal Reserve Bank. Now the government has their $1 trillion, and they can start handing it out like toilet paper. Here's some for you, here's some for you, and here's some for you too. Problem solved. The government raised the money they needed, and now they can pay these stimulus checks, they can pay these bailouts, and they can continue operations as if nothing ever happened, and life can go on like normal. Right? Well, remember what I said in the beginning of this video. There's a cost to printing all this money. I talked about this in a previous video, so I'm not going to go too deep into it today, but when the Federal Reserve Bank prints all this money, you, taxpayers, have to pay the price twice. Just like everybody else, when the government borrows money, they have to pay it back plus interest. And remember, the government gets their money to pay for everything through taxpayers with tax dollars. That means you and me. That means more of our tax dollars are going to be going towards paying off debt instead of paying for services you'd actually like to see. And we just racked up trillions of dollars worth of debt in the past few weeks. The second way you pay is through a hidden tax called inflation. When you pump up the supply of anything, in this case, our dollars, the value of that thing, our dollars, comes down, which makes the price of everything around you go up. That includes your rent, your groceries, and your Netflix. Inflation isn't usually something that happens overnight. It's a slow and gradual rising of prices, which is why most people never see it happen, and that's why it's called a hidden tax, because slowly the price of everything around you keeps going up, while your savings and your income can't afford the same lifestyle that you had 5 or 10 years ago. And that's why it's very important for you to be growing your money. So the government is financing their operations with one credit card, and then they're paying off this credit card with another credit card, and then they leave you with the bill. That's not good news for our national debt, and I'll explain why in just a second. But for you, this is why it's so important for you to be investing your money. Rich people understand that inflation is making the majority of people poorer each and every day, which is why they work hard to grow their money. I know it sucks. The system abuses the financially uneducated, but now that you know, I need you to do something about it. That means living below your means so you have money to invest, or at the very least, at least growing your savings faster. And that's very easy to do if you move some of your savings to an online bank like our sponsor CIT Bank, because they pay you with higher interest rates, and I got the link in the description below. CIT Bank is an online bank, which means they don't have the same overhead and fees as traditional banks, which means they can pay you with more interest on your savings. It's free to open an account. They don't charge you any monthly maintenance fees, and you can access your money whenever you want. Plus, your money is safe because CIT Bank is FDIC insured. I mean, CIT Bank is a regular bank. The only difference is that they're online, so they have less fees, which means they can pay you with higher interest. So if you want to learn more and see how much more you can earn on your savings, conditions do apply, and I got the link to where you can do that in the description below. Minority Mindset is a partner with CIT Bank, so if you use them, we will get compensated, but there's no additional cost to you. I mean, it's free to open an account. So if you want to learn more and get started and see how much more you can earn on your savings, I got the link in the description below. So what's going to happen with this whole government debt bubble? Well, for the first time in history, the US national debt passed $24 trillion. And in 2019, we had about a $1 trillion national deficit. And in 2020, analysts are expecting something closer to a $3.8 trillion national deficit, so you can expect our national debt to go up this year. Plus, thousands of cities across the country are facing the same problem where they don't have enough money to pay for their operations. Now, the government isn't very good with their money, and that's probably an understatement, but these numbers really don't mean anything. They're just big numbers unless you understand how the national debt works. Normally, if you have too much debt, you have to cut back on your lifestyle. Like, maybe you can't afford those nice dinners, or maybe you can't afford that fancy vacation to the Bahamas that you wanted because you have too much debt. It's the same with our government, sort of. Like, you might have heard talks of the United States Postal Service or the USPS completely failing and just going bust because the government doesn't have money to pay them. But there are other programs that the government might not want to cut because they really like them. So this bigger national debt puts more pressure on the economy to produce and grow faster, because that would generate more tax dollars and the government would have more money to pay off their old debts and fund their regular expenses. But that is kind of a double-edged sword, because that can kind of incentivize risky business or unethical business activities just because the government needs to grow the economy faster. But if the economy can't grow fast enough to generate more tax dollars to fund all these expenses, then the government will have to borrow more money and raise taxes. That means not only would more of your tax dollars be going towards paying off old debt, but you would have less of your paycheck for yourself because now you have to pay more money in taxes, and on top of that, the limited paycheck that you do have will have less buying power than that same amount of money 5 years ago, because inflation keeps making the price of everything around you go up. In other words, the rich will get even richer and the poor will get even poorer. Like I said before, this is why it is so important for you to be growing your money and your wealth. We are already seeing wealth inequality at near record levels, and this new national debt bubble just exacerbates the problem by injecting a steroid into it with this higher inflation, which is why, again, financial education is so important, so you can use the system to your advantage instead of getting abused by it. And now, if our economy can't grow fast enough, and raising taxes doesn't do it, then we could be seeing this national debt bubble bursting, or the United States government facing bankruptcy. We've seen cities go through bankruptcy in the past, like Detroit has gone through bankruptcy, and when that happens, people who invest their money into the city through bonds lose their investment, and people and jobs and programs that are working through this government might get cut, and people who have been working for the government and have money invested with the government through pensions or other things like that, they could see those get completely wiped out. Now, the United States going bankrupt would be very extreme, but any rational person has to wonder that, is there a tipping point? Like, is it really possible for the United States government to rack up an unlimited amount of debt without ever facing a real tipping point or debt crisis at the national level? What I do know is you can only inflate a bubble so much, and I can't predict the future. I have no idea when that tipping point will be for the United States government. But I do know that if and when that time does come, then you would likely be seeing a worldwide recession, if not depression, because of it. Again, this is why financial education is so important, so you know how to take care of your money and grow your wealth without relying on the government to do it for you. And if you're looking for resources on how to grow your financial education and manage your money, well, we have a free ebook on money management and investing that you can read for free when you sign up for our financial education emails, which are different than our financial news emails. And you can get a free ebook and start reading our financial education emails by clicking the link up here or by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, share it with one friend, that way we can help spread the word. If you want to learn more about whether the stock market is manipulated, I already made a video on it, and you can watch this video on YouTube by clicking this button right over here. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep hustling.